One of the biggest cliches in the world of sports coaching is the locker room speech. In fiction, this is often the most famous part of a sports movie. Kurt Russell in Miracle, Will Patton in Remember the Titans, and Matthew McConaughey in We Are Marshall are famous examples of this trope in action. Many of us who played sports at one point in our lives can recall a motivational speech we were given, and many coaches remember speeches that they have given to their players. However, in the modern football landscape, focus on prioritized traits for a head coach has shifted toward the X's and O's strategist. While this trend has admittedly been much more prominent in the NFL than the NCAA, it is still clearly seen in the world of college football. Successful coordinators get lower-level coaching jobs, and after proving that they can implement their offensive or defensive system there, can work their way up through the various levels of the Power Four. However, there is a coach in the highest level of modern college football who breaks this trend. One who was hired in his early 30s to a group of 5 school, while having never served as a coordinator at any level. And after leading that team to their best season in school history after only 4 years, was hired at 37 to take over a program in the vaunted Big Ten Conference. He has led his team to statistically the best 7-year run they have had since the 1950s, all while creating one of the most unique cultures in college football. Our subject today on Inside Football Leadership is Minnesota's PJ Fleck. One thing that will be key to understand in our discussion over PJ Fleck is that this is not an X's and O's story. Unlike our previous episode covering Mike Leach, Fleck is not renowned for being some innovative mind on either side of the ball. As previously mentioned, he has never called plays and has only served as a graduate assistant, wide receivers coach, and recruiting coordinator before getting his first head coaching job. Fleck's story is not about innovative schemes. It is about original and authentic leadership ability. PJ Fleck is one of the clearest modern examples of the CEO football coach, pure leader of men. His leadership philosophy is shaped by a devastating personal tragedy and his relentless optimism in response to it. PJ Fleck was born on November 29, 1980. He grew up in a supportive household that cultivated and pushed his work ethic.
Whenever I would come home from shooting hoops or throwing the baseball or any other athletic endeavor, he would ask, "Are you done?" When I told him yes, he would reply, "Well, that's fine, but don't forget, this is always someone out there taking one more rep that you just did." Early on, he was instilling in me that my path would not be easy and that I would have to work to achieve success. He knew I had big dreams, and he prepared my mind to think, focus, and respond the right way.
Despite his diminutive stature, that work ethic would help turn Fleck into a formidable high school athlete. At 5'9" and 150 pounds, he was an all-state athlete in football, basketball, and track. As a senior, he set an Illinois state record with 95 catches for 1,548 yards and 16 touchdowns. As you could imagine, 5'9" receivers who ran a 4.8 40-yard dash are not exactly the most sought-after athletes for Division I football. However, he impressed at a prospect camp at his local college, the Mid-American Conference's Northern Illinois University. He received the last available full scholarship to play football for the NIU Huskies. Fleck ended his NIU career as a two-time captain with 179 receptions, 2,162 yards, and 11 receiving touchdowns. As was a theme up to this point in PJ Fleck's life, it was unexpected that he would move up to the next level. He went undrafted in the 2004 NFL Draft, but got an undrafted free agent offer from the San Francisco 49ers. After spending his rookie year on the practice squad and getting into his first NFL regular season game in Week 17, things were looking up for Fleck's NFL future. But unfortunately for Fleck's childhood dream, this story does not end with the constantly counted out, undersized wide receiver succeeding at the highest level of football. After working his way up to the number 3 receiver in the 2005 preseason, he blew out his shoulder. After spending the entire 2005 season on the shelf, blew out his hamstring right before training camp was set to start in 2006. Soon after this latest injury, 49ers head coach Mike Nolan called Fleck into his office and informed him that he was cut from the team. However, this was not the end of their conversation. Nolan immediately offered Fleck a coaching job on the 49ers staff. When Fleck inquired what his role would be, Nolan replied, "I don't know yet. I don't have a job open, but I'm going to invent one for you because I think you should get into coaching." After what Fleck described as a lot of prayer and signs of faith, he decided that he was going to end his playing pursuits to get into the world of NFL coaching. However, the 49ers were not the only team that wanted to bring Fleck on. Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel had received a recommendation from a mutual connection that Fleck would be a great choice to fill the offensive graduate assistant role at Ohio State. In the span of just a few short days, PJ Fleck had gone from a cut NFL wide receiver to a sought-after coach by multiple organizations. In Fleck's mind, college was the way to go. This was no knock against the NFL, but as he put it,
I needed a clean cut from the NFL at the time because if I coached the same guys whom I thought I was better than, it would be hard for me to move on from playing to start my new career.
so with that, PJ Fleck began his coaching career at Ohio State. Unlike our previous episode on Mike Leach, Fleck did not have an overarching mentor or location where he molded his coaching philosophy and grew his skills. Fleck's rise through the ranks of the assistant coaching world can be described as swift and varied. After spending the 2006 season at Ohio State, he returned to his alma mater at Northern Illinois and coached the receivers from 2007 to 2009. In 2009, the title of recruiting coordinator was added to his job duties. Fleck, who is always energetic and an eternal optimist, would prove to thrive in the recruiting role. The classes Fleck helped recruit would go on to be some of the most productive in the history of NIU. After that season, Fleck got a minor breakthrough when he got hired by Greg Schiano to be the new wide receivers coach at the Big Ten's Rutgers University. After 2 years at Rutgers, and most notably coaching one of the top receiver prospects in the 2012 draft, Mohamed Sanu, Fleck was able to follow his head coach to the NFL. He would now soon become the wide receivers coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. While no one would make the argument that the pre-Tom Brady Bucs were a historical powerhouse, it is worth noting that Fleck helped lead to an increased wide receiver production at yet another coaching stop. Both Mike Williams and Vincent Jackson had the best seasons of their careers up to that point, and Jackson made the Pro Bowl after 1,384 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. While one can definitely give Fleck some credit for being a good receivers coach at multiple levels and being an effective college recruiter, one can also be extremely skeptical about the track record that was just laid out. On paper, not much of that seems to scream head coach material, especially at 32 years old. Hey guys, just wanted to quickly jump in to thank you for listening to this episode so far, and also to remind you that you can further support the podcast on Patreon. For just $2 a month, you get access to several special things, including written transcripts and sourcing of all podcast episodes, along with monthly articles. Our first special Patreon article will drop next week, written by myself and featuring rankings of college football coaches in the ACC and Big 12 Conference. We're going to rank these coaches in each conference from worst to best. And unlike other sports programs that you may see that focus on hot takes and catchy headlines over substance, we're going to provide valuable information for each of these coaches to help you get to know what to look for as the season kicks off and not be surprised when that sneaky underdog team does well. I'll be excited to continue this series in August as we rank the SEC and Big Ten coaches. There's also going to be some other stuff that's happening and being dropped on Patreon and some announcements of some future projects that I'm very excited to make public in the coming weeks. Thank you for your support, and I hope you continue to enjoy this episode. How a person chooses to respond to tragedy often shapes the outcome of that person's life. There's an old motivation cliche that has been used by coaches at all levels throughout the years that says you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control the response. There's another popular phrase: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The connecting factor between great leaders is their ability to persevere through public and personal tragedy. These events, as hard as they are, do not break these people. These events instead shape their purpose and bring clarity to their mission. I imagine one of the worst tragedies one can face in this life is the loss of a child. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happened to PJ Fleck on February 9th, 2011. On that day, Fleck's second son, Colt, died as an infant due to a heart defect. A loss so immeasurable, so tragic, will shake anyone down to their core. The natural reaction to a loss of this magnitude is to find some way to honor that child, something to give him a legacy that he himself was not able to create. Out of this tragedy is where Fleck's most famous mantra, row the boat, was born.
As you hold your son as he passes away, your whole life changes. What you believe in, how you've believed in it, what you've done to that point, where you're going to go and how you're going to live your life all changes. But row the boat is really my son's second life as I continue to live life for him. It's his life.
Out of despair would come the never give up mantra that Fleck would use to turn around the Western Michigan program and elevate his Minnesota squad. Row the boat consists of three things. Number one, the oar. A rower has their back facing the direction the boat is moving. They cannot see what is ahead. It's like how we cannot see the future. The rower must choose every day to keep his oar in the water and to just keep paddling, while trusting that the others in the boat are doing the same. It is also the energy that propels your life: friends, family, career, purpose. Number two, the boat, which represents sacrifice. As you continue to sacrifice, to serve, and to give, your boat grows. The more people you have, the more the boat can withstand. But you can only accomplish this by sacrificing your own desire to achieve the goals set before you. And number three, compass, which gives direction. It is who you surround yourself with, what you choose to focus on, what your spiritual life looks like. Where is the ultimate destination of your boat? The metaphor is often mocked by rivals of Fleck's opposing teams. Critics have called Fleck a used car salesman or a cheap motivational speaker. But one thing is clear: row the boat sets a clearly defined culture for Fleck's programs. However, this new mantra would be tested very early on as the youngest head coach in the FBS began his first season with the Broncos. When you hear the headline, "Team out of the MAC hires 32-year-old receivers coach as their new head coach," you may think that Western Michigan was a bottom-tier program with a recent history of 1 to 3 win seasons. Surprisingly, however, this was not the case. They had come off of a disappointing 4-8 year in 2011, but in the 4 years previously, their records were 7-6, 6-6, 5-7, and 9-4 dating back to 2008. Previous head coach Bill Cubitt's total record was 51-47 during his 8-year tenure. Why bring this up? Because while Western Michigan was not a dream job, they were also far from the worst team in college football. The Broncos didn't have to settle for PJ Fleck. They wanted PJ Fleck. This was made evident in comments made by Western Michigan Athletic Director Kathy Beauregard on the day of his introductory press conference.
We wanted a coach that would bring limitless energy, passion, enthusiasm, and opportunity to our football program, both on and off the field. And we know that Coach Fleck is that person. He stresses discipline and accountability in a positive and consistent manner, and is someone that has been a winner at every level of his career.
As you can see, there was optimism around Kalamazoo, Michigan. However, the first year for the new Broncos head coach would soon turn into a nightmare. 1 win, 11 losses. That was Western Michigan's record in Fleck's first year. This included a loss to FCS program Nicholls State, and the Broncos' lone win was a 1-point victory over perennial FBS cellar dweller UMass. Criticisms over Fleck's lack of experience and scheme specialization were not quieted by the numbers, which showed the 2013 Broncos as the 118th ranked scoring offense and the 107th ranked scoring defense. This year was worse than any Western Michigan season under former coach Bill Cubitt. And making matters worse was a controversial decision Fleck made entering that season. He decided to rescind the scholarship offers of many players that had received them as a part of Cubitt's final 2013 recruiting class. He received some bad press for this, including an article in USA Today High School Sports. Several high school coaches, most notably in the Indianapolis metropolitan area, voiced their displeasure with the decision and told Fleck to not bother coming back to their high schools in the future. However, this decision fell in line with Fleck's larger program goals. It was his belief that recruits should commit to a coaching staff, not a school, meaning that he didn't want players who just wanted to be a Western Michigan Bronco. He wanted players who would play under PJ Fleck's program. For his part, Fleck, who was always the underdog growing up, acknowledged the hard situation he put some of the recruits in.
I know if it was me, I would be ticked. I also know if it was me, I would have showed up in the office of the head football coach telling him I was still dying to be here.
While rational minds can disagree on whether he went about it in the correct way, Fleck showed from day one the type of program he wanted to instill. He only wanted the guys who wanted to specifically be a part of the culture he was building. A season like 2013 has the potential to completely demoralize a leader, especially in the high-pressure, high-stakes world of college football. When faced with failure, a leader must balance the desire to maintain their beliefs with the need to be responsive of potential ways to improve. For leaders who may lack in self-belief or an optimistic worldview, years like Fleck's 2013 might have caused a crisis of confidence, potentially even the decision to change some of your core principles with the hope that it would lead to success. However, Fleck stuck firmly to his beliefs and went out to find players who wanted to be a part of his culture. To his credit, there was a lot of high-quality talent that bought into Fleck's vision. The 2014 recruiting class was ranked 73rd nationally, which is very respectable for a one-win MAC team. 2014 brought yet another loss to Fleck's record after Week 1 to the Big Ten's Purdue Boilermakers, lowering Fleck's record as a head coach to 1-12. However, Fleck's belief in his program and the buy-in of his players started to show results on the field. The Broncos won 8 of their last 10 games and ended the year with an 8-5 record, which included a 6-2 conference record. This was the best record for Western Michigan since 2008. Fleck recruited another class ranked in the 70s for 2015, and this led to another 8-5 record for the Broncos. Fleck was also able to get his first bowl victory in the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl against Middle Tennessee State. The snowball continued as the Broncos got their first recruiting class in the 60s under Fleck for 2016. PJ Fleck had established his culture, had maintained an unshakable belief in his program, and had an incessant desire to find those who wanted to be a part of Row the Boat. This all culminated in a magical year, 2016. The coach who 4 short years ago went 1-11 in his first year led the Western Michigan Broncos to a 12-0 undefeated regular season record, including 2 Big Ten victories over Northwestern and Illinois, and Mid-Atlantic Conference Championship. Not only that, but on November 19th, the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan, hosted the premier television show about college football, ESPN's College Game Day. This was the first time in 13 years that a MAC school had hosted the show. PJ Fleck was now becoming nationally known, but his optimistic rhetoric had not changed. When asked about the year the Broncos were having, he said the following.
When the purpose of your culture and your program is to literally serve and give, it's just what we do. It might look on the outside as, wow, it's amazing, it's new, but we've been doing this for 3 years. The only difference is we're winning games. We're even doing even more serving and giving now than we ever have. And this team understands that if they're not humble Anybody can beat them if they don't play their best. But if they're confident enough and there's a balance of that, they can beat anybody in the country if they're at their best.
The balance of confidence and humility would be put to the ultimate test in their bowl game, as the underdog Broncos would face a Power 5 powerhouse, the Wisconsin Badgers, in one of the most historically significant bowl games, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. The Broncos fought the Badgers drive for drive and proved that they belonged on the big stage. Senior quarterback Zach Terrell and senior wide receiver Corey Davis, both of whom had played in that 1-11 2013 season, were now veteran stars of the team. Unfortunately, the Broncos were not able to complete the Cinderella story as they lost by 8 points. In just 4 short years, the youngest head coach in the FBS had greatly exceeded expectations, with an undefeated regular season, conference championship, a New Year's Six bowl appearance, and a top 5 NFL draft pick in the aforementioned Corey Davis. Fleck was a made man in Kalamazoo. However, he wouldn't stay there. I hope you're enjoying our discussion over PJ Fleck. I just wanted to jump in one more time and remind you that we are on multiple social media channels. Feel free to stay updated on the podcast via Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, along with LinkedIn as well. If you would like to share, give feedback on the episodes, or see some of our exclusive web-based posts, following and liking the pages is the best way to do so. I appreciate your support and your listen. Back to the episode. The Minnesota Gophers' job was not appealing from the outside. However, that had nothing to do with the on-field product. The Gophers finished 2016 with a 9-4 record and a Holiday Bowl victory. But the program itself was in shambles. There were several allegations of inappropriate conduct, including 10 players currently under investigation for sexual assault. Football staff, led by head coach Tracy Claeys, was at odds with athletic director Mark Foyle and the Minnesota administration. Claeys was fired, and the players made it very clear that they did not approve of the administration's decision. These factors played a huge reason in Minnesota's pursuit of Fleck, and a large reason why Fleck chose the Gophers. PJ Fleck stated in his book, Row the Boat, a never give up approach to lead with enthusiasm and optimism to improve your team and culture, that he was hesitant to leave Western Michigan, but believed Minnesota was the right move because he could prove his program on a higher level and could build the team's culture from the ground up, that he believed the Gophers football team was a sleeping giant. This was echoed by comments he made in his introductory press conference.
I'm not here to change the tradition. I'm here to change the culture. I'm going to promise you a lot because that's the way I live my life. When you watch Gopher football, it will be different from this point forward. I am different.
Admittedly, Fleck's tenure at Minnesota is a story still being written. He is still on the younger side of FBS coaches at 43 years old, and has a contract in place to remain the head coach until 2029. But his first 7 years in the Twin Cities have proven that, at the very least, he has built a sustaining culture and an above-average program at a Power 4 institution. Fleck's first year at Minnesota was reminiscent of his first year at Kalamazoo. The team receded in wins versus the previous year under Claeys, but PJ Fleck's ability to recruit was only aided by Minnesota's status and resources, as he pulled in the number 38 ranked class in 2018. Since that year, Fleck has been consistent, as his classes have ranged from the high 30s to the low 50s. He has also led a staff which has increased the amount of NFL talent coming out of the Gopher program, and specifically talent drafted in the top 2 rounds, including inherited players like Tampa Bay Buccaneers safety Antoine Winfield Jr., and players from Fleck's recruiting classes like Boye Mafe, John Michael Schmitz, Tyler Nubin, and Rashad Bateman, all of whom were drafted in the first several rounds of the NFL draft. As far as the on-field success, Fleck sits at a record of 50-34, including 3 seasons of at least 9 wins and a 5-0 record in bowl games. The most successful season by far for Fleck's Gophers was 2019. Minnesota started the season at 8-0 and was ranked at number 13 when they hosted a historical powerhouse and rival, the number 5 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions. The Gophers got their biggest win in the Fleck era with a 36-21 score. Several weeks later, the 11-1 Gophers hosted College Game Day on Rivalry Week, which is the biggest weekend of regular season college football of the year. They hosted their rival, the Wisconsin Badgers, and the winner would receive a spot in the Big Ten championship game. On that day, the Gophers were unable to get over the hump as they lost their best chance so far during Fleck's tenure to make the Big Ten championship. However, they ended the season on a high note as they defeated the Auburn Tigers in the Outback Bowl and would land the number 10 spot in the final CFP rankings for the 2019 season. It is yet to be known whether or not P.J. Fleck will one day guide the Gophers fully into the top tier of the Big Ten Conference. The main inconsistency that has plagued Fleck's team has been the lack of an explosive passing game. However, this past offseason, the Gophers used the transfer portal to land the number 7 ranked portal quarterback and the 2023 FCS Quarterback of the Year, Max Brosmer. Along with this, Fleck also landed the highest ranked recruit of his tenure and the second highest ranked recruit in Minnesota history, 4-star safety and number 1 player in the state of Minnesota, Floyd Parrish. These recruiting successes, along with the realignment of the Big Ten Conference, make 2024 a crucial year for the Gophers to finally break through into the upper echelon of Power 4 college football. Now knowing P.J. Fleck's story, what leadership lessons can we learn and apply to our lives? 2 major things stick out to me. Number 1, oftentimes a change in leadership requires organizational reshuffling and even turnover to facilitate complete buy-in of a new leadership team. I believe a major strength of Fleck is that he realizes people buy into and feel a stronger connection to other people more than concepts or specific organizations. One of the toughest parts of leadership is balancing the existing team culture with the vision that you have when you take over a new role. In his case, it was not just enough for someone to like the concept of being a Western Michigan Bronco or a Minnesota Golden Gopher, but that his players had to like the leadership culture of his specific team. They had to want to be P.J. Fleck guys. Now, this does not mean that a leader should go in assuming that this will need to happen all the time and with everyone, because there are plenty of people who are malleable and able to adjust well to working under different leadership styles. But a leader must be prepared for those conversations when taking over a new role. It is a business cliche that people are your greatest asset, which is true, but I believe that it is equally true in the inverse. One of the greatest motivators of players or employees is the trust, respect, and buy-in they have of the people leading them. It is a leader's responsibility to cultivate that culture, but also to find and nurture those who can feed into the success of the leadership plan. Another lesson that is clear from analyzing P.J. Fleck's career thus far is that long-term successful leaders have to be themselves, and they have to have the confidence that people will want to follow that. The thing that has intrigued me most about Fleck is just how different his processes are to that of other college football coaches. He is a motivational leader and teacher first, and a football coach second. He is someone who you rarely see without a suit and tie on, which is an homage to his first boss, Jim Tressel. And his press conferences sound more like eloquently prepared CEO addresses than the laid-back casual football conversations. These facts have often led to others criticizing Fleck as someone who seems sleazy or egotistical or even fake. However, he is truly being himself in these moments. We are always going to do a better job at being ourselves than trying to be a cheap imitation of someone else. An obvious caveat to this is that we should always be seeking self-improvement. But the point here relates more to a person's core personality traits. The classic football-related phrase is that the NFL is a copycat league. But sports are just a microcosm of human nature. Human beings are copycats. When we see something or someone successful in our field, there's an obvious desire to emulate that. While one certainly should look at successful tactics and see how they can be adapted into their own leadership philosophy, success does not come solely from copying others. We need to examine ourselves, find out what our strengths are, and work to make them even stronger, while also working to minimize our weaknesses. On the next episode of Inside Football Leadership, we examine a man with a storied career spanning several decades, who is well known for being one of the last of a dying breed of old-school triple option offenses. He stuck to his system and proved that old concepts could work in a modern world. Episode 3 covers former Georgia Tech head coach Paul Johnson.